The profound ability to elevate the reader into an almost mystical state of compassion and wonder makes Raymond Carver's Cathedral one of the greatest short stories ever written. And to be sure, it's not a piece of fiction rooted in magical realism, a la Isabelle Allende or Gabriel Garcia Marquez, nor is it some fantastical tale rooted in myth and lore. The genius behind Carver's Cathedral resides in its ability to find the magic in the seemingly mundane aspects of our lives. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and comment down below. As always, I'd love to hear your own thoughts on poetry, music, and literature. Raymond Carver's Cathedral starts out quite tedious. The unnamed narrator is immediately off-putting. He's a crude and bitter man, filled with the sort of hang-ups and prejudices only a lifetime of hard luck and defeat can provide. He's seemingly bereft of compassion and understanding. He treats his own wife as almost a nuisance and even downplays her suicide attempt. The story begins with him resenting a visit from his wife's old friend named Robert because he's blind. The unnamed narrator even laments, quote, "He was no one I knew, and his being blind bothered me. A blind man in my house was not something I looked forward to," unquote. But Carver is a brilliant writer, and every line is filled with subtlety and subtext that grows with meaning and profundity long after you finish the story. As Cathedral unfolds, the narrator's attitude begins to shift. The pivotal moment occurs when Robert and he awkwardly watch television together late into the AM hours while his wife is asleep. After listening to a show featuring an Englishman discussing European cathedrals, Robert asks the narrator to describe a cathedral to him. No easy task, as Robert is blind from birth and there's no real point of reference to build upon. Regardless, the narrator is suddenly determined to explain a cathedral to his blind guest. After struggling for a bit, the narrator grabs a ballpoint pen and a paper bag, has Robert place his hand upon his, and they begin to slowly draw a cathedral together. Robert, who has never seen or understood what a cathedral looks like, is guided by the narrator's hand as they draw, and slowly he begins to imagine. And this simple shared experience becomes a moment of compassion and understanding, devoid of farce or melodrama, in a manner as poignant as it is profound. The drawing of the cathedral serves as a metaphor for the possibility of human connection that goes beyond appearances and preconceived notions. Carver's story suggests that true understanding and intimacy derive from empathy and compassion and a willingness to see beyond our physical senses. And that is what Robert, the blind man, teaches the unnamed narrator, and by extension, all of us. True sight and insight is not achieved with our eyes alone, but through compassion and understanding. And again, Carver's subtle, brilliant, and ironic symbolism is readily evident. Jesus once cured a blind man in the New Testament, but in Cathedral, it's a blind man that teaches another how to finally see. And of course, the transformation of the narrator lends itself to the very title of the story. Carver chooses a cathedral on purpose to symbolize the narrator's transcendental experience. Again, Carver's symbolism is masterful because it's so subtle. Robert asks the unnamed narrator to close his eyes while continuing to draw. Unsure of himself, he finally relents. Quote, "His fingers rode my fingers as my hand went over the paper. It was like nothing else in my life up to now," unquote. In the moment when his eyes finally close is when he begins to truly see. It's magic, it's transcendence. You have to read the story to feel it deep within yourself. And unlike a rote lecture or a TED Talk on the subject of compassion or empathy, literature has a way of manifesting the ideal beyond mere abstraction or intellectualizing. You feel it deep within your bones. and the best works are neither preachy or didactic. The reader is left in a beautiful state of perplexity, empathy, and wonder. Carson McCullers' The Heart is a Lonely Hunter comes to mind, as does James Joyce's The Dead or Steinbeck's East of Eden. And Raymond Carver's Cathedral is no exception. Novelist Tobias Wolff, who wrote This Boy's Life, once described the rapture he felt after reading Cathedral as follows, quote, "I felt as if I were levitating there above the couch. I was weightless, filled with a sense of profound, inexplicable joy. Blessed and conscious of it, I understood that I was in the presence of a masterpiece," unquote. And I think that sums up Raymond Carver's story perfectly. Ultimately, Cathedral is a story about a blind man teaching all of us to finally see.